Welcome to this session, Exploring the Respiratory System. This module aims to examine the respiratory system and the role it plays in the human body. We will cover the structure and function of the lungs, the pathway air takes through the respiratory system, the muscles involved in breathing, the process of gaseous exchange, and finally, how exercise affects the respiratory system. The primary function of the respiratory system is to absorb oxygen from the air and remove carbon dioxide from the body through a process called gaseous exchange. This system works in tangent with the circulatory system in order to provide oxygen to all the tissues around the body, and of course, remove carbon dioxide. As well as this, the respiratory system has a role in sound production, the sense of smell, and protection from dust and microbes entering the body. The respiratory system is made up of every organ that helps you breathe, which are the nose, mouth, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, lungs, bronchioles, and alveoli. Before we get to the lungs, we need to take a look at the tracheobronchial tree. The trachea is the start of this structure and is the largest airway in the body. A small leaf-shaped flap is located at the entrance, which closes over the trachea when eating to prevent food from entering the airways. The trachea is lined with rings of cartilage, so it always remains open. As the trachea progresses, it branches into the right and left bronchi, with each bronchus entering into the corresponding lung. The lungs are the major organ used in respiration and are located at either side of the thoracic cavity. The right lung is slightly larger than the left because of where the heart is located. Each lung is covered by a double-layered membrane called the pleura. In between the two layers, there is a very small amount of serum, like fluid, that lubricates the surface of the lung and prevents friction when the lungs are expanding and relaxing. So once each bronchus enters the corresponding lung, they divide even further into passages called bronchioles. These passages ensure that air reaches the depths of the lungs. It's important to note that bronchioles lack cartilage. At the end of each bronchiole, there is a structure called an alveole, which plurally are known as alveoli. These are tiny sac-like structures and are the site of gaseous exchange. Each alveole has lots of capillaries in its walls, which enables gases to diffuse in and out of blood, passing the alveoli. As we know, the main function of lungs is to bring air into the body from the atmosphere and serve as a site for gaseous exchange. But what else do we use them for? Well, there are actually many other functions of the lungs. They ensure there is a balanced pH level in the body. Too much carbon dioxide can cause the body to become too acidic, and if a rise in acidity is detected, the rate of ventilation increases so we get rid of the unwanted gas. As well as this, the lungs can also filter small blood clots and remove small air bubbles from the blood if they occur. The lungs can act as somewhat of a cushion for the heart if the body experiences an impact. Certain membranes in the lungs secrete immunoglobulin A, which can protect the lungs themselves and the body from some pathogens that cause illnesses like the flu. Now that we know the structure of the airways in the lungs, let's take a look at the pathway air follows when it enters the system. Air first enters the system through the nose and/or the mouth. If air goes through the nostrils, it is warmed and humidified. Tiny hairs on the inside of the nose called cilia protect the nose and other parts of the airways by filtering out particles of dust and any other harmful particles. The air then travels to the pharynx, which is the upper throat region. This is actually part of the digestive system and the respiratory system. At the bottom of the pharynx, it divides into two passages, one leading to the digestive system and the other leading further into the respiratory system. This is where the epiglottis is located. The air then travels through the larynx, which is the top of the air-only passage. This contains vocal cords that vibrate to create sounds. The air continues on, down through the trachea. This passage is also lined with cilia that help sweep fluid and foreign particles away so they stay out of the lungs. When the air reaches the end of the trachea, it splits and follows the left and right bronchi into each lung, continuing on through the bronchioles and into the alveoli, where gaseous exchange occurs. So how exactly does gaseous exchange happen in the lungs? Well, as we mentioned before, the alveoli are the site where this process occurs as they contain lots of capillaries, blood flowing through the pulmonary artery towards the lungs is deoxygenated. As this artery gets closer to the lungs, it branches into smaller passages and eventually into pulmonary capillaries. As the capillaries pass over the alveoli, the carbon dioxide in the blood diffuses through to the alveoli, while at the same time, the oxygen we had inhaled diffuses out of the alveoli and into the capillaries. The alveolar and capillary walls are extremely thin, enabling these gases to pass through them so easily. The oxygen that diffuses into the capillaries binds to the hemoglobin, which allows the oxygen to be transported by the blood away from the lungs. When we exhale, the carbon dioxide now in the alveoli leaves the body through the same respiratory pathway we went over earlier in this module. The process of breathing requires some help from muscles in our body. The diaphragm is the muscle that is essential in this process. It is a dome-shaped muscle that separates the thoracic cavity from the abdomen. Without this muscle, we would not be able to breathe. As we inhale, the diaphragm contracts and flattens, allowing for the expansion of our lungs to draw in air. When we exhale, the diaphragm relaxes and returns to its dome shape, pushing air out of the lungs. As well as the diaphragm, the intercostal muscles play a large role in breathing. These are muscles located between each rib. When we inhale, the intercostal muscles help to expand the rib cage, and when we exhale, they help to draw the rib cage in. These are the main muscles involved in breathing, but there are some accessory muscles that have other primary roles in the body, but also have a part to play in breathing. The sternocleidomastoid elevates the sternum during inhalation. The scalenes, serratus anterior, and latissimus dorsi all help elevate the rib cage. The pectoralis major and minor help pull the ribs outwards. The anterolateral abdominal wall helps increase intra-abdominal pressure during expiration by pushing the diaphragm further upwards in the thoracic cavity. Finally, the internal and innermost intercostals help depress the ribs during expiration. All of these muscles are generally only used by the respiratory system when we have to involve an active mode of breathing that most commonly occurs during exercise when we have to breathe rapidly. As we know, exercise is extremely beneficial for all systems in the body, including the respiratory system. When we exercise, our muscles demand and use more oxygen, which results in more carbon dioxide in the body. In response to this, our breathing rate increases in order to excrete the carbon dioxide and take in more oxygen. Typically, we breathe 15 times per minute, but when we exercise, this increases to about 40 to 60 times per minute. Regular exercise actually results in our muscles becoming more efficient and needing less oxygen to function, which results in less carbon dioxide being produced. This leads to less air being needed to breathe in for a given exercise, for example, running. Exercise also strengthens the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm, which allows for deeper inhalation, enabling the lungs to inflate fully. Although exercise is extremely beneficial for our lungs and respiratory system, there is a condition called exercise-induced bronchoconstriction, more commonly known as exercise-induced asthma. This is when a narrowing of the airways in the lungs occurs due to strenuous exercise. Individuals with this condition will experience shortness of breath, wheezing, coughing, and a production of excess mucus when exercising. Although experts are not certain the exact cause of exercise-induced bronchoconstriction, it is thought that repeatedly exercising in cold, dry, or polluted air, chlorine-rich environments like swimming pools, or participating in an exercise that involves extended periods of deep breathing, like long-distance running, can be the cause of this condition. Exercise-induced bronchoconstriction is managed through the use of prescribed medicine, like inhalers, and the use of preventative measures. Lots of lung and respiratory-related conditions exist, so it is extremely important that if you are working with an individual with any sort of condition or illness, that you get advice from a medical professional beforehand.